Section 3.2. Let's talk about power. So we have 4 terms we need to define. So we're going to start by defining 4 terms. And we've heard some of these terms before. So for example, what are the 3 common voltages a power supply provides? 3.3, 5, and 12. So, but what is voltage? Great question, Jackson. Glad you asked. Right, so this is how much work is required to move a charge from one location to another. Right? How much work does it take for me to move from here to here? Versus, what if I was 500 pounds heavier? A lot more work, right? Voltage. How much work, how much effort's required to move a charge from one location, from A to B? That's voltage. Voltage is measured in volts, and it's represented with the letter V, Victor. Your power supply usually has several different voltages, such as the 3 most common, which are 3.3, 5, and 12. All right, next we have resistance. What was the term used for how much effort it takes to move from location A to B? Volts, right? How much work is it for me to move from here to here through air versus if I was in water, which is more viscous, right? Or difficult to move through, right? I've got more resistance, right? So resistance is the opposition to the flow of current in a circuit. So for example, if you're swimming in a lake versus you're swimming in a river upstream versus swimming in a river of syrup upstream, right? The more resistance, right? Does that make sense to everyone? Well, where does this come into play? Well, different metals are different levels of conductive, right? So they're going to have different resistance levels. The less resistance you have, the more current is able to go through a circuit, which we'll define soon. Resistance is measured in ohms. Ohms. So the resistance is ohms. So that's when you're doing grounding checks. How much current's going through here, right? You're going to measure that in ohms. A good fuse, right? You want that to be as close to 0 or 0 for your resistance. Next we have current. So which term was how much work it takes to move from A to B? Voltage. And the opposition to the flow? Resistance. Now we have current, which is actually the quantity, the amount of electrons moving through a circuit per second, moving from point A to point B. How many are moving through? Think about a highway, right? Well, right, maybe you've got a highway, but during what time, right? How many cars are actually moving from point A to point B? Is it 1? Is it 100? Is it thousands? That's the current. Think about a river, right? A lake, right? There's probably not much movement. A slow-moving river. It's got some quantity of water going through it, but a really fast river, that quantity of water moving through it is more. When we're talking about electricity, this is the number of electrons that are going through that circuit per second. That's the current. Current is represented with an I, and we measure it in amperes or amps with an A. So we have the amount of work required to move electrons from point A to point B. We have the opposition to the flow, which is the resistance. And then we have the quantity, how many electrons are going from point A to point B, and that is current. Easy day? And finally, no new terms here, because power is the measure of work required to move electrons through a circuit. What is how much work it takes to move from point A to point B? What's that called? Voltage, right? When we multiply that by how many electrons are going from point A to point B per second, which is current, right? How many electrons are going from point A to point B per second? What's that? Current, right? So we take voltage times current, and that gives us power. Power is represented with a P, but we measure it in watts, or a W. This is what your power supply is measured in. So how do they figure out the watts or the power, right? If we scroll up, we can see we have different formulas. We know that power, which is measured in watts, is the work required to move a circuit between point A to point B, which is what? Voltage, which is represented with what letter? V. And we multiply that by how many electrons are going through point A to point B, which is what? Current, which is represented with an I. That appointment's at 11:30.
No, I need to go to the bathroom.
Okay, you're good, you're good. So V times I. That's how we get power. Easy day? So power equals voltage times I, which is current. Well, what if I had the value for power and voltage, but I want to solve for I? We divide, right? So I could solve for I. How do we just get I? Divide both sides by V. Now we get P over V equals I. Easy day? Look at that. And you never thought math, algebra would come back. Watkins.
Yes, I did have a question when I was going over the formulas. I was trying to figure out I is kind of interchangeable as far as like current and amps. I noticed it's used for both depending on the formula.
Yeah, so it's measured in amps. But in the formula it's represented with I. Watkins, does that make sense? Okay. So we just plug it in, right? I represents current. So whatever your current is, that's what you plug in there. There's another formula. V, what's V? Voltage equals I, which is current, times R, which is resistance. What if I wanted to just solve for resistance? Divide both sides by? By I. Which means resistance equals V over I. What is the opposition to the flow? Resistance, which is measured in ohms, or that omega symbol. What is the quantity? How many electrons are moving from point A to point B per second? Current, which is measured in amps. But in the formula, it's represented with an I. And what about the work required to move from point A to point B? Voltage, measured in
Volts.
easy day?
Yes. I do have a
Jackson.
off-topic crazy question. Who made volts?
Oh, wait, one second.
Oh, you want this?
No, it's cool.
Like, how do you just measure something in ohms? You know what I'm saying? This is a random question.
No, that's a good question.
This is random.
I forget what formula was here.
That was
P over V equals I. Okay, so we've got a multimeter. Chief, could you pull up an image of a multimeter or multimeter for us? And we'll see this in later chapters. So you can set this to different things. You can set it to ohms, etc. And you'll actually have a red and a black lead on this. And you'll place one on your equipment, one on like the rack. And you can test to see, between here, right, how much resistance is going through here. All right, so for example, if I'm touching here, and there's a path between here of electricity, it'll go through, right? And we can measure it with those two probes that connect to this here. And it'll show up on that screen. Jackson, you good? You just want to go to your analysis? Just kidding. Everyone good?
There's no way.
Okay, next I think we're going to talk about some new terms. Power supply voltage settings. We know that some power supplies come with a dual voltage selector switch. LaBranch, what are the two voltages, or what's one of the voltages it allows us to choose? 115, and the other one is 220, right? And we talked about what happens if it's incorrect already. What happens if I have it wrong? It could fry that, right? Abdul? So this switch right here, that allows us to choose between two voltages. What do we use in America? 115. But in other countries, they use 220, right? So if you're a company and you're making power supplies, you don't want to make some for this country and some for this country. You just make one and ship it everywhere, and then they've got the option to choose. But voltage is how much work is required, right, to move from here to here. Let's say, oh, I've got to do this much work to get this from here to here. Well, if I've got too much work, oh, error, right? With power, that means something could be fried, could start a fire, our components could break. Good? Okay. Now, we never open up a power supply because what component, who remembers, that keeps the charges? Capacitors, right? And we can see one right here on this image here. These are some large capacitors that are going to hold that charge for a long time. So we never want to open up that power supply unless we're a trained technician. That's what the ETs in the Navy are going to do more of, but they're probably just going to replace the component. Easy day? I'll skip this lab, and we're going to learn about power fluctuation. All right, let's talk about power fluctuation. Power can fluctuate. There's some terms we might already know, but in a good, consistent power, that's going to be 100%. Right, here's our power on the left, 0 to 100, and here this is time. Good power, consistent, easy day, right? Now, power can also fluctuate. It could be a little inconsistent. Maybe you're nearby a generator, or the power from the factory just can't do it evenly, right? So that's going to be a different noise, right? If it's not quite 100, it's kind of all over the place. This can cause issues. Inconsistent power, your device isn't going to operate at the same level of efficiency throughout, and it's going to cause issues. Easy day? All right, and we know about a blackout. What's a blackout? Right, complete loss of power. That's a blackout. Now the difference is 80% or less, right? That's going to be a brownout. So blackout, complete loss of power. A transformer blew at the factory or along the way. Someone cut through a power line, etc. A brownout is reduced power of AC, right, because that's what's coming from our commercial power, to below 80%. This could happen if systems are overloaded. It can't provide everybody the power, right? We add a bunch more buildings on base, and it's just too much, right? Not everybody can get the 100% they wanted. We're not operating at 100%. So brownout is less than 80%. We talked about noise, which can be interference from generators, lightning, etc.
Is that like EMI or?
On the cable side, it would be that. Here we're talking about commercial power, AC power.
Is there anything you could use to like get rid of that noise?
We'll talk about that in a second. All right, so that's less than 100%, less than ideal, right? But can we go over 100%? We can indeed. And there's two terms we're going to talk about. Spike and a surge. So both of these are over 100%. The difference between a spike and a surge is the amount of time. A spike is a gradual increase over 100%. That's a spike. That would be like this room getting brighter, 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 and then pop, the lights pop. So a spike is a gradual increase over 100%. Easy day? Well, what's a surge? A surge is a dramatic increase. Boom! All of a sudden, out of nowhere, no warning, Mr. Novak yells, or the lights pop out of nowhere. Does that make sense? So that's a few nanoseconds, right? It's just, that's a surge.
And that just happens over like a
Few nanoseconds. Yep. So seconds versus nanoseconds. Next, we're going to learn about how we can prevent and protect ourselves from these things. Everyone good? Okay, to prevent against surges, we can use a surge protector. Oh, that's pretty self-explanatory, right? So it protects you against that 100%. What it will do is, well, you plug into that surge protector will only push out like that up to 100% power, not more than 100%. Easy day?
And it push over 100%.
It is indeed, yeah. Think about yourself, right? You put your all in for the day. If you put in a lot more, your time to recover is bad and you may break. All right, next, we all know what a battery is, yes? Awesome. So both of these next two devices, they operate using a battery. If you've probably seen a portable battery pack for your phone, right? Oh, your phone dies or it's dying, you plug it in, it charges it. That's what an SPS is, a standby power supply. Power goes out, you go grab this battery pack and plug it into your device, and your device is plugged in now. Easy day? The downside with that is, well, if you lose power and your device is plugged in, everything that was in RAM, of course, and that you didn't save to your storage is going to be gone, right? So how do you prevent this? If the power goes out, you don't want your device to power off. So that would be an UPS, an uninterruptible power supply. Because you've got, instead of your computer plugged into the wall, you have your computer plugged into the UPS, or the battery, which is then plugged into the wall, which is what you have here. So really, your computers are connected to a battery that's just constantly being charged from the wall. Does that make sense? Yes. So instead of just connected to the wall, you're connected to a battery which is connected. If this goes down, your battery will be good for however much that battery is rated for. For us, right, it's not going to be for forever, right? It's going to be just enough time, or should be enough time, for you to save and safely turn off your computer. Now in the military, there are very large UP systems, UPSs, uninterruptible power supply, for critical systems. So if we lose power for whatever system, there'll be rooms of batteries that'll power those until it gets back up.
Why is it important to shut down the equipment before the battery goes out?
So if you don't shut down the equipment properly before it boots up, right? We've learned about the data, right? If it's in RAM, we haven't saved it. Anything that's in that volatile memory is gone that we haven't saved. For systems, there's some systems that are very vital. They have to be shut down in a certain order, otherwise they're not going to come up properly. You'll learn all about those various systems when you get to your command. That work for you? You want to interject that fleet thing right there. Yeah. Shutting down properly, right? Just think about you, right? When you go to bed, do you just, improper procedure. You wake up, your back's going to hurt. If you're old like me, you don't brush your teeth or you don't put on your pajamas, it's going to be a problem, right? You got to have a proper shutdown procedure. Easy day? Any questions on any of this? Now there's some, you don't want to plug everything into an UPS. So example, a printer. A printer, right, when it heats up that corona wire that we'll learn about later, takes a lot of electricity. You may have noticed that, right? If you turn on a vacuum, what do the lights in your apartment or your house do? They kind of dim, right? So imagine if that was operating off of a battery. It's going to cause a problem, right? So same thing, right? That printer, right, draws a lot. You've probably printed something and noticed, the lights go down too, right? So a printer should never be plugged into an ups.
Do the ups and SPS play a part to cold and hot sites?
Yes. A cold and a hot site is, let's say we've got a redundant facility. A cold site is nothing's installed, powered on. A hot site is everything's powered on, there's people there ready to go. In both of those situations, you're probably going to have an ups. But the difference between hot and cold is it ready to go or not ready to go? Good. Right here. Scroll back up.
Oh, is the only reason that you shouldn't plug it into an ups is because it takes a lot of power?
Correct. It draws a lot of power, right? It's going to damage it and whatever's connected to it. Anyone need more time? All right. Now we can see a picture, right? And we can all see the ups next to our computers. Or below our computers. And there's a surge protector as well. Let's do a quiz. So let's scroll down more. All right. What supplies a consistent level of electrical power to a computer or other device? UPS, which stands for uninterruptible power supply. You lose power, you're uninterrupted. Sudden increase, not dramatic, sudden increase in voltage exceeding 100% of the voltage. Spike. So keywords there. Interference from generators and lightning cause noise. Provides a backup battery supply power when the incoming voltage drops below normal. Standby power supply. Dramatic increase in voltage above the normal flow of electrical current. Questions, comments, concerns? No. Are we ready for a break?